Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'm going to be taking a look at yesterday's Prime Minister's evasions, where both Keir Starmer for Labour and Ian Blackford for the SNP highlighted Boris Johnson's penchant for ignoring the rules that he expects ordinary folk to abide by, often under pain of legal action. In this case, a party, a big one as well. Lots of people in what can only be described as the polar opposite of a socially distanced environment at the height of the second lockdown nearly a year ago. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So yesterday's Mirror had a front page with a photo of Boris Johnson appearing to snort a cocktail, presumably in order to get it into his system as fast as possible. Don't people usually siphon it into their arse for that? But anyway, photo aside, the explosive story was that he hosted an alcohol-fueled party at number 10 Downing Street during the second lockdown nearly a year ago. Quite how it took this long to come out, I don't yet know. But the report said that there were dozens of people, maybe between 40 and 50 people, all crammed into a room, all boozing. A COVID nightmare was how one source described it on the front page. And this was the main topic of conversation for both Starmer and Blackford. Like, Blackford made the point that the paper had confirmed the story to him and that they have legal advice that the law may have been broken. No kidding. And just as with Starmer, he made the point that it's one rule for him and one rule for everyone else. Which is actually deeply unfair, I have to say. As people have pointed out many times, this isn't the case at all. It's not one rule for Boris Johnson and his ruling Tory elite. It's no rules at all. The rules are just for us. In his response, Johnson suggested that Blackford ask him a question about the weather instead. You think I'm kidding, don't you? I know I can be a bit sarky. I'm not actually kidding. Blackford asked a question about this party breaking the law, potentially, certainly breaking COVID rules, and Boris Johnson says, ask me a question about the weather. There's been a storm, don't you know? I mean, this is not the first time Boris Johnson has suggested to opposition MPs, not least Starmer and Blackford, that their questions are rubbish and that they should just ask the questions that he would willingly provide for them. After all, he hands out cards to his own backbench MPs so that they can ask the question he wants them to. Why won't opposition MPs take his cards? Doesn't make sense. Now, in terms of what we know, Boris Johnson did not deny that this party took place. It was later confirmed that it absolutely did. Starmer began his questions by just asking if the Christmas party had taken place on December 18th last year. You know, for the record, could you just confirm whether it took place or not? Johnson obviously didn't say anything. Well, he did, but he didn't confirm or deny it. He tried to defend it by saying all guidance was followed. I think he's overusing that term a bit. Would this be like when he said he followed all the guidance at that hospital he recently attended, where he was photographed without a mask several times, when the guidance for that hospital, which is available online, makes it clear that the mask must be worn everywhere, not just in this place or that place, everywhere. And on the visit, he was asked 3 times by the staff there to put a mask on, and he refused. You cannot help but come to the conclusion that when Boris Johnson says he follows the guidance, he doesn't mean the guidance that we have to follow, but his own secret guidance document that just reads like a note from his parents. Boris Johnson has permission to be guided by his own hedonistic instincts, signed Stanley Johnson. But the reason why both main opposition leaders were making an issue of this was because it actually cuts through in a very real fashion to the public. There's a pattern emerging here. A real pattern. Boris Johnson became popular because he successfully cultivated a them and us attitude. Divide and rule, the oldest political trick in the book, goes right back to the days when political leaders could barely utter anything more eloquent than ugh, and were promising bigger and better fires and more mammoth than you could possibly eat or wear. But it falls down somewhat when the us doesn't include him. When political leaders are not seen to be following the rules that they lay down for the rest of us, that actually irks people in Britain. It's quite amazing, really, I suppose, watching from the outside, because we put up with an awful lot of crap. But not our political leaders trying to lord it over us in quite such brazen fashion. At the end of Starmer's questioning, for example, Johnson tried to suggest that banging on about these things, parties and wallpaper, is not really relevant. That just makes him look even worse. Not only is he confirming that he's not following the rules that he sets for others, but he doesn't even see it as an important issue. In fact, we can make a bit of a list of the main lines of attack on the government that are bearing fruit right now, and that is why they're coming up time and again. You know, the first one rule for them, another for the rest of us. People don't like that. And Johnson doesn't seem to be learning the lesson that people don't like it. Neither do Tory MPs come for that. The second one being in danger of suffocating the trough while they're supposed to be doing their jobs as MPs. Essentially corruption, and when the Tory MP themselves isn't corrupt, trying to get off the actual corrupt MPs as well, doing mates favours. You know, feathering their nests, corruption, sometimes both. People don't like that either. The Tories seem to have calmed that one down a little bit for now with their pretend measures that do nothing, but it'll all come back with the next big scandal. Which may be sooner rather than later, because Jacob Rees-Mogg is now being investigated by the Standards Commissioner for potential financial dodgy dealings. But given that they aren't tackling the problem, it doesn't matter whether Jacob Rees-Mogg is the next big scandal or not. The problem's just going to keep coming back. And opposition parties will be right on hand to highlight it. Labour even have an MP laser focused on exposing it on a daily basis in the form of Deputy Leader Angela Rayner. And the third thing that keeps coming up is the broken promises. Now, these are now mounting up in a pretty obvious way. Conservatives are usually quite subtle about their promises and can be quite good at hiding it when they break them. Yeah, you know, they say, oh, no, I didn't mean this, I meant that. Oh, we did do that. Oh, okay, you meant that. Sorry, that's my fault. The voters there, that's my fault for not understanding you. I'm sorry, I didn't understand you. But so when they break it, they get away with it. Johnson's mouth's far too big, though. There's no hiding the fact that he's not delivering what he said would, because he was very clear about what he was promising. You know, and these three things are now being pushed very hard by opposition MPs. You know, the broken promises, and in particular, and the corruption, and the one rule for them and another rule for everyone else. And it's because of two main reasons. Firstly, all three are issues important to the public. Despite what Johnson would like to think, they are important to the public, and they're having an impact on the public. That is why Blackford and Starmer are both pushing them. Secondly, they are all issues that the Conservatives are extremely vulnerable on. And that is to say nothing. You might say, oh, Phil, what about the lies and incompetence? Yeah, although those are largely tied to Boris Johnson himself. It is not beyond possibility that if he was removed, a successor could install some cabinet ministers with some brains and some political acumen and persuade the public that competence and honesty is being restored again. It won't be, but they may give the impression. And speaking of lies, and with Blackford's motion earlier this week, Boris Johnson also gave us a couple of new ones as well yesterday. The first one, I suppose, is not so much of a lie as an evasion again, but it's an old lie. Starmer was asking about these so-called new hospitals. He referred to a government document which ordered NHS trusts to describe refurbishments as new hospitals. Johnson promised 40 new hospitals. And it's not just that we're not getting 40 new hospitals. We're not getting any. When the promise was first made, people asked at the time, what do you mean by that? Do you mean a bit of a... I even say, oh, do you mean a lick of paint? But journalists were asking them, oh, you mean refurbishments, don't you? Oh, you mean building a new wing? No. 40 new hospitals. That's what they said. They insisted on that. 40 new hospitals. Starmer said, refurbishments all very well and good. That's nice, good. But they're not new hospitals. Johnson didn't seem to have an answer to this, apart from talking about, you know, where you might get the land for a new hospital, which is not the point. You know, he promised new hospitals. If there were difficulty delivering such a promise because of obtaining the land and so on, then the promise shouldn't have been made, should it? In fact, Starmer made that point in an interview recently, didn't he? He said that if Johnson can't keep his promises, he shouldn't bullshit. That's his word. He used the word bullshit. Max liked that, I think. But Johnson ended, when he knew Starmer couldn't back at him, by saying that the government were cutting tax for low-paid families. Which is not true. It's objectively not true. They've actually raised them. It was pointed out that he was probably talking about the universal credit changes, which do benefit some low-paid workers in isolation. Overall, it's not a benefit. It's still, on real terms, less money. But there's a universal credit change that provides a bit of extra money take home at any rate. But it's not cutting taxes. Their taxes aren't being cut. It's gone up because of the national insurance rise. You know, but there we are. So we're starting to get some real focus from the opposition now. It's remarkable how often Starmer and Blackford are now picking up on similar topics. Like last year, I used to make a point of saying when they asked questions on a similar topic, it was unusual, you know, where their interests aligned. Because the two parties don't have interests in exact alignment. They're both anti-Tory, but they're not in alignment with each other. You know, this is because the Tories' defences are showing clear weaknesses. That's why they're both attacking the same line so often now. Those weaknesses are being hammered at on a weekly basis now. You know, it's often said that Boris Johnson's problem is he never switched from campaign mode to government mode. What we actually want is Labour to switch to campaign mode now and then. Starmer is now starting to push at a small number of issues repeatedly. Which is exactly what's needed to get ready for a campaign, because you need a few core issues to embed themselves in the minds of the public, not a complex network of policies. You want a complex network of policies for good government, but people aren't going to take that on board. A few things that people can see are going wrong with this government and what Labour would do to correct them. And it's that second bit that they need to make sure they don't forget as well. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.